countries. The meeting has been organized by these two organizations in collaboration with the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic and UNESCAP. My name is Małgorzata Ćwiek, and I'm responsible for climate change-related statistics at the Statistical Division of United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. As the official opening of the webinars, we will now hear welcome remarks by Mr. Michael Nagy of the UNECE Statistical Division, Mr. Volker Teube, the Director of EFTA Statistical Office, and Ms. Elmira Alminkulova, the Head of Administration of the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Gosha. And good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me well. And I would like to welcome UNECE to our second edition of the joint EFTA UNECE webinars on climate change-related statistics. We are glad to see such a big interest in this event. I see already 44 people connected, but we're expecting many more. And I would like to thank our colleagues from the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, who make this possible with their financial and logistical support. I also would like to thank the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic, who already some years ago had the idea of organizing such a regional event. But there was lack of budget, and when EFTA stepped in for the first time in 2019, we were enthusiastic of organizing a regional training workshop in Bishkek. As you all know, the pandemic changed everything, so we had to turn this into a series of online events. We all know that good statistics are crucial for managing and monitoring climate change-related policies. Already 10 years ago, the Conference of European Statisticians set up the first task force on climate change-related statistics, which drafted the so-called recommendations on climate change-related statistics. And with its core set of climate change-related statistics endorsed by the conference in 2020, ECE now has a clear recommendation for its member states which types of statistics and indicators should be produced on a regular basis. Over the next 2 days, we will discuss and learn from each other how this can be done from a process perspective, but also from a methodological and technical point of view. In addition to Kyrgyzstan and EFTA, I also would like to thank our co-organizers from ESCAP, and of course all our trainers and speakers from Italy, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Nepal, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Australia, and Eurostat for sharing their rich knowledge, and I wish you all a fruitful event. Thank you very much, and over to you, Gosha.
Thank you very much, Michael. And now I invite Mr. Volker Taube from EFTA Statistical Office. Volker, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here also with you this morning. Also still happy welcome, happy and healthy new year from me to all of you. We from the EFTA Statistical Office here in Luxembourg, where we are sited, are happy to be able to provide to you this webinar on climate change related statistics for ECA countries together with our colleagues from the UNECE and in cooperation with Statistics Kyrgyzstan and other international organizations. As you might know, EFTA stands for European Free Trade Association. We are the international organization that serves our 4 member states, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. We are also cooperating with Eurostat on many topics. We are setting up quite a lot of trainings together also with UNECE, also alone, but we do quite a lot together with our international partners. So with this, I just want to keep it short. I wish you and us all a very fruitful webinar and hope that this will really contribute also to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you very much for these welcome remarks and for all your support for this event and others that we work on together. And now I would like to invite Ms. Alimkulova, who is the Head of Administration of the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic. Ms. Alimkulova, you have the floor now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear participants. Let me, on behalf of National Statistical Committee of Kyrgyz Republic and me personally, greet the participants of online seminar on the climate change-related statistics for Eastern Europe and Caucasus and Central Asian countries. The purpose of our webinar is to exchange practical experience between countries, to prepare and to use the indicators, climate change related indicators, to review methodology of calculation of some important indicators related to climate change, like greenhouse gases emissions and use in energy, and also to discuss existing needs to strengthen to develop capacities of statistical systems. Kyrgyz Republic took on the commitments on fighting climate change and expediting the transition to climate sustainable low carbon model of development, being the part of the Framework Convention on Climate Change of UN since 2000 and having ratified all related further agreements like Paris Agreement. Moreover, at the national level, within the National Strategy of Sustainable Development of Kyrgyz Republic by 2040, one of the priority areas of sustainable development of our country is implementation of measures for adaptation to the climate change in the sectors of economy, implementing measures for reducing the greenhouse gases emission and low carbon development, implementing the system of environmental statistics and monitoring of issues of climate change. Last year, our country provided our NDC, within which the country has to improve the statistics of climate change for monitoring of the progress of achieving. From our side, I would like to note that National Statistical Committee of Kyrgyz Republic fully supports the initiative of developing the statistics of climate change. Taking into account relatively new area of statistics, there is a need for regular capacity building of preparers and users of statistics in the area of climate change. Dear colleagues, I'd like to express special thanks to the organizers of this activity for organizing this important event, and I hope for active discussion during our online seminar. Thank you very much, and once again I'd like to wish you a happy new year, the year 2022. I wish you good health and success in our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Alimkulova, for being with us at this opening of the webinar. And thank you also to your whole office for the support and participation in this event and in the work on climate change related statistics. This commitment is really exemplary, and we very, very much appreciate this, as well as the collaboration on this event. So today we are starting with webinar 1 of our 2 webinar series, how to develop a national set of climate change related statistics and use it in the policy making. Tomorrow, we will have a second webinar on producing climate change related indicators on energy and emissions from the system of environmental economic accounting and other sources. It is a continuation of a series of 3 webinars on the same topic that we held in November and December 2020. So let us start with some short housekeeping announcements. Both webinars, today and tomorrow, will last for 3 hours and have a break in the middle. Speakers of each session are listed in the program, available in English and Russian. You can find the link to the meeting website with the program, all the presentations in English and Russian, and video presentations that we strongly encourage you to watch in the meeting chat. The videos I mentioned include 2 very interesting presentations from UNSD, which are formally part of tomorrow's webinar program, as well as the recordings of presentations from the previous webinar series. Especially if you did not attend the webinars in 2020, we would advise you to watch that videos because it will complement the content of this year's webinars. As you know, we have interpretation in English and Russian. And above the video of the active speaker, you can choose the language that you want to listen to. So I think by now you've already selected whether you want to listen to English or Russian. And please note that in this platform, you cannot speak or use your video unless you get the floor. So if you want to speak during the discussion time, you will need to raise your hand using the green button with a hand in the top panel and wait until we start your stream. This takes a few seconds, so please wait a moment before you start speaking and make sure that your streaming is already working. If you take the floor, please remember to use a headset, speak slowly and clearly, and be mindful of the time. If you speak in a different language than the previous speaker, give the interpreters just a moment to switch the language channels. And you can use the meeting chat at all times to write your comments or questions to the presenter. And if you would like to make an oral intervention during the discussion time, please raise your hand, and if the time allows, the chair will give you the floor. If you have any technical problem, please try changing the language channel, changing or reconnecting your audio device, or reloading the page. And you can also contact directly the Interprefy support using the button with a blue exclamation mark, which you can see in the right bottom corner, hovering over the chat. It is right next to the envelope for private chat. And as it has already been mentioned, these webinars are a continuation of 2020 webinars. But actually, as Michael already mentioned, they build on 10 years of work of development of climate change related statistics. So as a way of a very short introduction, I would like to say a few words about this work. I'm going to share now just a few slides. I hope you can see them now. So this work has been happening in the international community, and in particular under the Conference of European Statisticians. In short, the CS. Um, and the CES is the main intergovernmental body in the UN in statistics in the UNECE region. UNECE is one of the UN regional commissions. It is for Europe, but actually it includes 56 member states in Europe, North America, Asia, and the CES itself includes also all the OECD member states outside the region, as well as all countries that would work. So actually the word European is a little misleading, and most of the countries that are represented here today were taking part in that work in this way or another. And since the beginning of the work, the primary objective has been to make official statistics more useful for climate analysis and policy, and promoting the involvement of national statistical offices in greenhouse gas inventories and climate reporting. And we have worked towards that objective through methodological work, facilitating sharing knowledge and good practices and capacity development. And in our region, the methodological work is always carried out by teams of national and international experts, and when ready, it is endorsed by 60 CS member countries. So on this 10-year journey, there were some key milestones, and two most important ones were already mentioned by my colleague Michael. That is the CES recommendations on climate change related statistics and the CES core set of climate change related statistics and indicators. The 2014 CS recommendations on climate change related statistics actually introduced the concept of climate change related statistics and made a clear case for involvement of the NSOs in this area of work. And when these recommendations were endorsed by more than 60 countries and international organizations, there was a call for developing an internationally comparable set of climate change related statistics and indicators as a priority. So immediately a dedicated task force was created and tasked with proposing such a set. This task force was chaired by Italy and vice chaired by Luxembourg, and it first developed an initial set which was then pilot tested and subsequently refined. This set also served as a basis for the development of the global set of climate change-related statistics, which I'm sure you are all aware of. And in the end, the global set, which goes for endorsement of the UN Statistical Commission this March, includes, in fact, many of the CES indicators. However, it also covers a few more indicators, while the CS set remained focused on the core indicators relevant in the UNECE region. The final CS set was endorsed in 2020 by more than 60 countries and organizations participating in the CS work. This final product includes a report describing the set and its selection procedure, its implementation guidelines, and most importantly, metadata sheets for all of the core indicators. Each of the indicators, the metadata describe the methodology, explain the policy relevance, indicate data sources, etc. Moreover, for each indicator, corresponding contextual and operational indicators are proposed to interpret the core set and provide more details according to national circumstances and priorities. All these materials are available and meant to support national statistical offices in developing their own national sets of climate change-related statistics and indicators. Because it is clear that we need to see more and more internationally comparable indicators, as was indicated by our speakers at the opening. The reliable and comparable data is crucial for the implementation of climate change policies. But we also have to recognize that each country will have a slightly different set of priorities and information needs, and may approach the production of their national sets differently. And this is exactly what we will learn today: how 4 different countries approach developing their national climate change statistics and indicators based on internationally agreed methodologies, but taking into account their national priorities. And furthermore, we will find out what are the common lessons learned from those different approaches that can be helpful to all countries embarking on this journey. And we know from the registration forms that actually we have a very diverse group of participants today, representing various institutions, not only NSOs, and with different levels of experience in producing climate change related statistics and indicators. So this should lead to a very interesting 2 webinars. We also have a number of participants who are following the meeting without being inside the platform as viewers, and we also welcome them very much. And they will also have the chance to follow and to make comments on the chat. So please participate actively, ask your questions, share your views, and tell us about your experience, because we know that you have a lot of these. And let us start this active participation with a very simple question. Do you have experience in producing climate change related statistics and indicators? So please use your smartphones or another tab in the browser and go to menti.com and reply to the question, do you have experience in producing climate change related indicators? You will have to put in the code, which is now visible on the slide, or scan the QR code. We will also put the link and the code in the chat, and we will see what are your replies after our first speaker. So while you reply, I would like to invite our first speaker for today, Ms. Angelica Tudini of ISTAT. Angelica is permanent senior researcher at the Italian National Statistical Institute, where she is currently responsible for monetary environmental accounts. From 2014 to 2020, she has been the chair of the task force that developed the UNECE core set of climate change-related statistics. Angelica, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Gosha. It is a pleasure for me to be here today to share our experience. I hope you can see me and hear me well.
Yes.
And you can also see my presentation. Okay, so as Gosha mentioned, at ISTAT, I work within environmental accounts, but these efforts of implementing climate change related statistics and indicators is a joint effort in our institute, also with colleagues that work on climate change statistics. So what we will do today is, of course, how we, in practice, how we manage to implement climate change related indicators for our country. Of course, putting emphasis on what can be useful for other countries that would like to do the same thing. So we will not focus on numbers so much, but more on the process and on what can be useful for other similar situations. So, of course, we will have a look at some results. We will see what indicators are actually available in our country, but always, of course, with the emphasis on what can be useful for other countries. And in doing so, it is also important, in my opinion, to look at how we disseminate our results. So let's see what our experience was over the years. We started a couple of years ago, and we actually started with a traineeship. So there was a general traineeship program in our institute, as it might be the case also for you. And we thought that that might be a good opportunity to start the implementation process. It must be said that we at ISTAT are in a lucky and easy situation, so to say, because also before starting the implementation process, there was a commitment in place by the Institute, because both myself and other colleagues participated in the development of the indicators. And so, of course, the commitment to carry out the work with the actual production of numbers related to the indicators was there. So we didn't have to put much effort in that phase. So, as I said, we took advantage of something that was already in the program of the Institute, like a traineeship, to start the process. And then after that, after a few months, we took advantage of another thing that we planned, that was a comprehensive publication on environmental accounts, to finish the compilation to the extent that that was possible, and to also analyze the results. Then, as we heard in the presentation, we also asked ourselves what is really also relevant in our country, and of course, Italy is a very diverse country. Different areas have different priorities. They exert different pressures on the environment. So the idea was to try and understand how feasible it was to produce the indicators not only at the national level, but also with a territorial breakdown. So that was another stage of the process, and of course it reflected this time very much the national priorities that are fundamental to understand in your process. And then there was another step, and again we took advantage of something that was already planned, that was the National Statistical Conference. This opportunity provides provided for us the context in which to update the indicators and to increase the numbers. So as you can see, really what we are doing is to take advantage of something that is already planned or that has already a context, like a conference or a comprehensive publication or a seminar with a certain focus. We are taking advantage of all these events to carry out step by step our implementation process. And in the table reported here, you can have an overview of what we have achieved. Actually, up to now, we managed to produce 29 out of 44 indicators that are the total indicators on climate change developed by the UNECE. Now, let's look at some detailed results, but of course, always with a view of deriving hints for you as potential also implementers. And it must be said that Italy is in an easy situation, certainly with respect to other countries, because we have environmental accounts in place. As a member of the EU, we need to comply with the regulation on environmental accounts, and so some of them, at least those that are compulsory by the according to the regulation, are in place. So, of course, we can rely on this basis. And so, as you can see from this table, a number of indicators on drivers. These are the subset of indicators on drivers. You can see that many of them can be derived on environmental accounts, and for us that was they were relatively easy to calculate because we have this basis. But I would like you to notice that in this table, we not only have indicators derived from the accounts, but we also have indicators derived from other statistics. And in this case, since we speak about drivers, many of them, of course, relate to energy. So it might be the case that in your country, there are not yet accounts, environmental accounts on energy, but at the same time, you may have energy statistics. And so it might be possible for you to start building these indicators actually starting from statistics. This is what is reported in this table as other statistics. This is the case when the indicators is not derived from accounts, but from another statistical basis, like, as I said, in most cases, energy statistics. So this shows that you can start producing part of the indicators from energy statistics, and then maybe as your country develops also accounts, SCEA, consistent accounts, then go on and gradually introduce other accounts. And then, as you see, there is an indicator that is indicated here as new. This shows that over time, new indicators are added, and so the work is, of course, a work in progress. You can start from a subset and then go on and expand this subset. Another thing that I want you to notice in this table is that in the final column, you can see for which indicator the territorial breakdown. The classification mentioned here is the NAS classification at the territorial level. NAS 2 and NAS 3 is a level for territorial breakdown. And so this column tells you which indicators are available and which ones are not. Because as I was saying before, this reflects our national priority that would be to develop indicators also at the territorial level. Of course, in your country, there might be different priorities as well. This table is pretty much the same thing. I don't want to repeat what I said. Only to add one thing that is not shown in the table. Regarding the breakdown, you have learned from the tutorials that although the core indicators are meant to be calculated at the national level, you can also have breakdowns at the territorial level, but also breakdown by economic activity. Of course, for your country, this might as well be a priority to show, for example, for emissions, in this case, which are the activities that contribute the most to national total emissions. And so in your case, you might invest some capacity to produce exactly this kind of breakdown. And again, you can rely on accounts if they are in place, or they are being developed, or you can start from other statistics. And in this case, the most common statistical sources for many countries in the world is the greenhouse gas inventory that has to be reported for compliance with the international protocols in place for air emissions. Then you have a list of UNECE indicators on impacts, and what I would like you to notice in this table is that for a number of them, you see in the table in brackets that the indicator we manage to calculate is actually partial or a proxy indicators. This means that in our country, we could not calculate exactly the indicator proposed by the UNECE, but something that was close to it. For example, in the case of freshwater withdrawal, we might be able to produce this indicator only for one sector and not for all of them, and so on and so forth. So this means that also for you, it might be possible to start the implementation from indicators that are actually close to or representing part of the indicator that is proposed, and gradually, of course, get closer to the internationally comparable indicators. And pretty much the same thing, nothing very much new on mitigation. We don't want to focus on the details here, only to see that also in this case, over time, we added an indicators to the list of those that we could calculate. So again, this is a work in process. This is a gradual process. It's not a static one. And finally, on the list of indicators on adaptation, Again, something similar to what we noticed for the impact indicators is that we managed to calculate some of the indicators from statistical sources that are not accounts, are other statistics, and in two cases we could not calculate exactly the indicator that is described in UNECE list by something that is close to it. So something very similar to what we observed for the impacts indicator. Now, yes, dissemination is certainly part of the process. As I said before, we managed to calculate also the NACE breakdown in a publication. So we not only calculated the indicators for the total economy, but also managed to produce a breakdown by economic activity for edited publication, and then we updated, as I said before, the indicators for one national statistical conferences. In general, our strategy is as follows. Whenever we contribute to a report, and there are different reports for which we produce indicators. One is, of course, the report on SDG indicators. Another one is the report on enterprises competitiveness. Another is a report on the energy situation of the country. So whenever our institute contributes to a report, we are trying to introduce in these reports indicators that are derived from UNECE list. In some cases, in the past, we used to produce different indicators for the same report. But now what we are trying to do is over time substitute or add to the old indicators the one derived from the UNECE list. Because of course this allows international competitiveness. Of course there was a consensus, an international consensus on this list, so we think that it makes a lot of sense to give priority to these indicators. So this is our focus, to try and give more and more importance to this set of indicators. One thing that we would like to do, but we haven't done yet, is to have a regular publication. This is, of course, an objective, but it's for the future. We didn't manage to do it so far. But of course, making sure that some of the indicators we produce are consistent with the UNECE list is already, in our view, a very good objective. So what can be useful for countries that are at the initial stages of the process from our experience? I think that we can say that, of course, when you start, you need to explore the whole range of statistical sources and not only focus on the environmental accounts, of course. And then again, as we said, you can consider starting from partial or proxy indicators, and over time get closer to the actual indicators, and then of course try and think about breakdowns that are relevant for your specific national situation. They might be specific NACE categories or spatial breakdowns and these kind of things. And then, of course, also think about how to disseminate the results, not only in a dedicated publication, but also by introducing these indicators in regular existing statistical reports. With that, I hope this was useful for you, and I would like to thank you, and spasiba.
Thank you very much, Angelica, for this very, very interesting presentation. I can see on the chat that some colleagues have issues with interpretation. So I just wanted to remind you that to listen to the interpretation in Russian or English, you have to choose the language that you want to listen to above the video. You can see interpreting, and under that you should see a button that says select if you did not select any language, or the language you have selected. And if the volume of the interpretation is quiet, please try to just choose the language channel again, or next to it you can see a little volume regulation. You can also try to increase the volume there. I hope this helps, and if not, please do write on the chat or directly to the Interprefy support what problem you are experiencing. And for if you have any questions to Angelica based on her brilliant presentation, or anything beyond that, please put them in the chat, and we will get back to all those questions during the discussion or after the break. And before we move on to the next presenter, I would just very quickly like to show you the replies from our little survey, so we know a bit more about each other. So far, we've heard from around 30 people, and we can see that most persons say they have a little bit experience in producing climate change related statistics and indicators. But we also have those who confidently say yes, and those who don't hide that they still don't have any. So I hope the webinars today and tomorrow will be useful for all of you, independent which answers you have chosen. With that, we move to the next speaker, Dr. Olivier Thunus. Dr. Olivier Thunus is the head of Satellite Accounts Unit at the National Statistical Institute of Luxembourg, STATEC, where he's in charge, among others, of developing the integrated statistical system on energy and to produce official energy efficiency and renewable indicators. He also oversees the production of the national list of environmental indicators and since 2019, climate change-related indicators for Luxembourg. He has a PhD in environmental science and was a vice chair of the task force that developed the indicator set. Olivier, you have the floor.
Thank you. Normally, you should see my presentation.
Yes, we see it well. We hear you well.
Thank you. And thank you to invite me for this webinar. It's a pleasure to share the experience of Luxembourg. And I'm happy to see that the title of the webinar is not why Statistical Institute should produce climate change related indicators. I imagine that all countries in the room understand why it's important. But I mention that because when we start this process to implement a climate change related indicator list in my country, it was the first question that we asked to the NSI, why you take care about this topic. It's not your domain, it's the domain of meteorological or climate institute. And this is perhaps the first advice of our, based on our experience, is that before to start all this process, we need to communicate on the process, why we do that, and explain that, is it a project which involve all national agency? This is an international interagency exercise because climate change is a cross-section topic. And of course, Statistical Institute has its place in this exercise because the cause of the climate change, or partly the cause of the climate change, is related to human activity. And the consequence of climate change will have an impact on human activity. And statistical institutes are very well placed to produce statistics on human activity. And saying that, usually you could start an easy process to implement climate change related indicator. Though the presentation for me today is to explain you the Luxembourg experience on the development of our national set, and also to give you some example how to use this set for policy making. Very quickly, just mention you that Luxembourg participate to the expert forum on producer and user since 2012, and we was part also of the task force which developed the climate change related indicator list. But this slide is mainly to recall you to download these two very helpful documents, which is the presentation of the core set implementation guidelines. It's very important before to start the process to read the international proposal and also some country example. In my country, I must say also that there is two important elements on which we could start the implementation of this list. First is in May 2014, we have the first meeting of a new group. It was a national working group on environmental statistics. This is a group where you have on the table all the national agency which be involved more or less with environmental statistics. By this way, it's easier to have this group to start the process. Here, this is a technical group. It's not a political group. It's just technical group which discuss about data viability and methodology. So we based our implementation process on this group. And the second very important element that we have in Luxembourg in February 2015 is the creation of a new unit inside Statistical Institute working on energy and environmental statistics. Means that we have human resource to work on this topic inside the Statistical Institute. And by this way, the Statistical Institute could be the animator of this process. So here at the timeline, we start our work at national level in June 2018. As I mentioned, we decide to add this topic of climate change in the statistical program of the working group. The first quarter 2019, we make the selection of the national indicator. The second quarter, we produce the time series, and in June 2019, we present the series, and formally the working group adopt the national list. Saying that, you see that it takes more or less 1 year in our country to implement the indicator list. After that, we of course make some dissemination exercise. In October 2019, we first very short publication presenting the 25 indicators. And very recently, in December 2021, we make new publication. I will show you this big publication just after. Concerning the implementation process, well, to be honest, we just apply what you will find in the implementation guidelines. It seems functioning well for us. I will not go through all this step. I prefer to focus on the step 4, selection of the indicator for our national set. What was the different step? First, we start, of course, to analyze the international proposal. And based on this analysis, we make the selection of the core indicator for our national list. This selection was made on different criteria, but 2 main criteria is first the relevance for the country, mean that we drop some indicator because this indicator we could produce it, but it's not give us some interesting information at national level. And the second criteria was the data availability. And I must explain you that for our national list, we decide to not propose or not use this approach to propose tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 indicator. We decide at the beginning that we will produce a list only with tier 1 indicator. And in case of the data are not available, we decide directly to propose a proxy indicator. And if we have the choice between territorial principle or residential principle in indicator, we always choose the residential indicator, means the indicator coming from our model account. After that, based on the selection of the core indicator, we decide to define some contextual indicator and operational indicator. And I think it's very important, this step, because it's where the user could find some helpful information. Of course, key indicator is also interesting to compare between country or to see some result on the objective. But really, if you want to make analysis with your indicator, you need to develop this contextual and operational indicator. Last step for this selection process, we also take care to have a balance between the different sub-area. Yes, you have on the slides different indicator. I will not go through them. You see that this is not exactly the international list, but we keep the 5 different area: impact, emission, driver, and you see on the screen, I give you an example on contextual indicator, the share of fuel sales to non-resident in total fuel sales. You know certainly that in Luxembourg, we have taxes lower than the foreign country, mainly for fuels products. That means that there is a lot of non-residents coming in Luxembourg to buy some fuels, and this is really a characteristic of our country, and we think it's important to include this kind of indicator in our list. We also have indicator on mitigation. You see more or less for all area we have 6 or 7 indicators, except for adaptation. This is a difficult topic. It's difficult to obtain data at this stage. And we see that for Luxembourg, we focus mainly on water and the issue to have water in the future and the measure to maintain the availability of water. Now I will talk more about dissemination. As I mentioned you, we make different publications. First, some publication to the general public. Here you have the 4 pages of this publication. First, the publication presenting the 25 indicator in 2009. Then we make very recently in December a stat news. We call that stat news. This is only 1 page to mention that we update the indicator list. The indicator list is directly available on our web portal. And this time we also produce another document, which is a methodological note. And I think that it's important to think about that when you will start to communicate on your indicator list. Because for many users, it's difficult to understand why when you present some numbers, this is not exactly the same numbers that you will find in a national report, for example, IPCC. And there is methodological reason because to explain the difference between number, and it's important to answer to all these questions in the same time of the communication. If not, there is the message will be lost directly. So this time we produce also this document, 2 or 3 pages to explain our methodology. And for the general public, we decide also to produce an infographic, and apologize, this is in French, but you can see certainly easily the different part of the presentation. On the left upper, you will see we talk about impact, precipitation and anomaly in hot days. In the left lower, you see the amount related to flooding in July. In the center, we talk about emissions. We compare industries and households. And on the right, we talk about the different measures for mitigation of climate change. We have, of course, renewable, but we also have CO2 taxes. It was publication for general public, and now concerning policy makers. Well, as I mentioned, the difficulties when you talk with policymaker is that usually this guy always use the greenhouse gas inventories and this framework to present national objective and communicate on this topic. And it could be a difficulty if your national climate change related indicator list is based not on inventories, but on environmental account. But we think really that using indicator on environmental account is really helpful for analysis purpose. But to do that, as I mentioned, you should not just keep at the level of the core indicator, but you need to go down and propose some operational indicator. And to do that, in Luxembourg, we developed a NAMEA matrix. Certainly, you know this kind of table when in row you have the different economic branches, and in column you have different information like macroeconomics indicators, emission, taxes, and so on, or the information that you could find in environmental account. And based on this matrix, you can make some research. And this is perhaps also one important element of my presentation, is that if you want to communicate with policymakers, you need to propose some analysis. You should not just wait that they discover your table on your web portal. You need to propose, to promote your indicator. And one manner to do that is make specific analysis. And it was just to present you this August site in my country. The idea of the government was to implement a new CO2 tax in 2021. And so we decide to use our climate change related indicator and NAMEA matrix to estimate the impact of the implementation of this tax. First, we try to answer to the question, who will pay this tax? And what will be the amount collected with the tax? This is the graph here. And you see in gray that this is mainly non-resident who will pay this tax in Luxembourg. So it's good news for policymakers. And then we go more in detail and try to answer to the question, what will be the impact for the company in terms of the increase of expenditure? And of course, you see that mainly this is the road transport will have an increase of their expenditure around 4%. We'll also try to talk about household. We estimate the impact of this CO2 taxes, which is an indicator in our national list. But we calculate them by quintile of revenue of household, and we propose to compensate this CO2 taxes by a fiscal credit. And the aim of this compensation is that for the two first quintile, that there is no impact on the household. So it's just to show you an example how you could use indicators, your national list, go more with operational information, and based on that, promote your indicator and the use of your indicator. And in this case, the government follow our recommendation and apply exactly the amount for the tax that we propose. So I hope that it was helpful for you. And if you have questions, you have my email, or you could use also the chat. Thank you. It's all for me.
Thank you very much, Olivier. It was very, very impressive and very interesting. So if you have any questions about the work of Luxembourg, please write it also on the chat, and we will get back to those questions after the break. And with that, we move to the last presentation of this first part of the session. And we will hear from Mr. Sushil Kumar Sharma, the director of the Environment Statistics Division, Central Bureau of Statistics in Nepal. Sushil is conducting monitoring and evaluation of environment-related censuses and surveys, development of environment statistics and compilation of the SIA accounts, and providing technical support to the government of Nepal and relevant stakeholders relating to environment statistics and environment economic accounts. He's also a member of the UN expert group on environment statistics. Sushil, I can see that the presentation is already shared. It's now coming into full screen, so you have the floor.
Thank you. Is it hearing?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you, UNECE and the UNESCAP, for providing this opportunity to share what we have done in Nepal about the climate change and the environment statistics. Next slide, please. Nepal is a very small country, but one of the disaster-prone country due to its topography and the climatic condition. Country is small but having different topography, plain, hill, and the mountain area, and the different climatic zone. Major like that earthquakes, landslides, flood, fire, thunderbolts are the major causes of the disaster events in Nepal. Environmental degradation and the climate change both interact and accelerate the occurrence and impact of the natural hazards events. Yearly loss of life, property, and the significant proportion of the gross domestic productivity GDP in every year in Nepal. Next slide, please. Next. Yeah. The climate change issue in Nepal. Nepal contributes only around 0.027% to total global emission. Although it is one of the countries most vulnerable to the impact of the climate change, Nepal is between the two big countries like China and the India. So its contribution uh, is nominal but highly affected. And Nepal submits its second internationally determined contribution NDC document to UN, outlining its target for the next decade to reduce emission and the support vulnerable community to adapt to the impact of the climate change. And the government strongly believes that these targets can be achieved as they have been set after consultation with various ministries, stakeholders, and the experts. Next slide, please. Yeah, the climate impacts in Nepal up to the 2100. It means the temperature. It is estimated that 1.5 to 2.7 degree increases. Due to that, the slow on the set impacts, desertification, droughts. Similarly, Nepal is the mountainous countries. Many Himalayan or the mountain are in Nepal, and black carbon in the high mountain. Its possibility due to this climate impacts. So, due to that, the rapid on the set impacts like flood, landslide, fire, and the glacier melting and the gulf issues also impact on water, energy, food, biodiversity, urban and the rural settlements, and the tourism. Uh, 1.5 to 2% GDP loss. It is estimated that, and poor indigenous, marginalized women, girls, children, disabled, all the groups are mostly impacted by the climate change. Many resources has shown that. Next slide, please. And what is the current situation? Uh, uh, I am in the Central Bureau of Statistics. Central Bureau of Statistics is Statistics Office of Nepal, and we have the separate environment statistics section in Central Bureau of Statistics, and we regularly publish environment statistics of Nepal by the data collection from the different census, surveys, and the admin data. And in 2016, we conducted the National Climate Change Impact Survey, first time in Nepal. National Climate Change Impact Survey. Similarly, in 2020, we conducted the Waste Management Baseline Survey report. And a major objective of this National Climate Change Impact Survey is to find the knowledge, impact, impact, and the adaptation practices. Major objective to find out that of that National Climate Change Impact Survey. Similarly, we also conducted in 2020 the Waste Management Baseline Survey. And by this data, we just second nationally determined contribution report the Ministry of the Environment has published, and we use that data in that NDC report also. Similarly, the ministry is also producing the national communication report. Our data also used in that communication report also. Similarly, another beauty is that in this pandemic situation also, we conducted the population census. Recently, the field work has been completed, and now the data processing is going on. And in that population census, one of the community questionnaire we developed, and in that community questionnaire, one of the thematic area is the environment and the disaster. And the what it means, there is a lowest administrative unit of the Nepal is the what, near about 7,000 wards. We collected this community questionnaire, and in that community questionnaire, one of the thematic area is the environment and the disaster, and this information we collected from this community questionnaire. Next slide, please. And the cooperation loop for the environment and the climate change strategy, basically CBS, it means the National Statistical Office, conducted census, surveys, and uh, uh, for example, agriculture statistics, energy statistics, waste statistics, industry statistics. It means in different area we conduct surveys and census and collect the data, and we produce environment statistics, climate change statistics, and the environmental accounts. Similarly, other stakeholders like ministries and the other stakeholders collect data like the forestry, land use, transport, air quality, and in this way, this kind of cooperation loop has been developed between the ministries and the NSO, National Statistic Office. Next slide, please. And this is the survey which we had conducted in 2016, National Climate Change Impact Survey. And in 2020, we conducted the Waste Management Baseline Survey. Both of these publication informs corresponding indicators in the global set. The global set, which this draft global set, which we got from the UNEST, United Nations Statistical Division, and we contribute there about how our situation is that. It means we contribute in that global set by this data from the National Climate Change Impact Survey and the Waste Management Baseline Survey. Next slide, please. Similarly, we produce this environmental statistics of Nepal regularly within 2-3 intervals of the time, and more the environment compendium also we produce. It is more, this is the database environment statistics of Nepal, and but this environment statistics compendium is more analytical type of report, and within 2-3 years of interval, we also produce these kinds of publication. Next slide, please. And national consultation on the draft climate change indicator, that draft climate change indicator which we got from the UNST, and I am also on the this expert group as a member. I am working on the UNST, and we got that draft climate change indicators, and we conduct the national workshop also. And what we have discussed in there, it means the discussion were made to develop indicators which can respond to main climate change policy questions in an internationally comparable way. And similarly, as provisions in UNST framework, agreed to keep these as 5 areas to be consistent with the UNST framework. Just my the before also mentioned that in the 5 areas also we can contribute or we can develop the indicator by this. Similarly, in preference area of the Nepal is basically in agriculture, forestry, and other land use, energy, waste sector, or discussed in our that consultation workshop. And the consensus also we made some of the indicator which are not which are on the global set, but which are not relevant in the context of Nepal. For example, related to the ocean and the other statistics which were beyond the scope of national assessment. Yeah. So this also we discuss in the consultation workshop. Next slide, please. And this just I am sharing, this is fill in questionnaire in the global consultation. It means what the draft set which we got from the UNST we discussed, and how many indicators we can develop from our the survey data that we discussed in our consultation workshop. Next slide, please. Yeah, first, for example, one of the major indicators is that household knowledge on the climate change. What about the knowledge on the respondent on the climate change? This is also one of the data which we one of the indicator which can collect from that our survey. Statistics in the global set, there is number of households with timely access to climate information. It means that information we got from our survey. Similarly, main source of the information about how the respondent get about the climate change knowledge. either from the radio, television, newspaper, awareness program, like that. That also we collected from that survey. This is also one of the indicator in their global set. Next slide, please. And similarly, this also is screen I am selling. In this way, we are contributing to the global set about the information which available from our the survey. Next slide, please. Similarly, we also collected data like that households affected by disaster in last 25 years. What is the conditions of the disaster in last 25 years? These kinds of data also we collected from our survey, and these also inform certain indicator on that global set. Next slide, please. Similarly, climate change impacts on crops and the livestock. What is the condition? What is the situation about the crops and the livestock in this 25 years of scenario? That also we collected in that that survey, and we contribute this also in the global set. Next slide, please. Similarly, climate change impacts on the human health. This kinds of data also we also collected in that survey, and increase in the incidence of the waterborne disease, increase in the incidence of the uh, waterborne disease or other kinds of disease. That kind of information also we collect about the human health in our survey. Next slide, please. Similarly, water resources, changes in the water resources, either increase or decrease or no change. These kinds of information also we collected in that survey, and this data also can support to develop the indicator. Next slide, please. Similarly, changes in the status of the animal and the plant species in last 25 years. What is the changes? Some are disappearing or new appearing, like that. Also, we collected in our survey, and from that also we can develop certain indicator from the global set. Next slide, please. So similarly, the adaptation measure, farm-based and non-farm-based. In this way, adaptation data from our survey, and these informations also helped to develop certain indicator. Next slide, please. Yeah, and environment statistics on the population census. I'm also sharing what we are collecting related to the environment statistics in the population census 2021. I already mentioned that the community questionnaire we developed in the population census, 6,743 wards, the lowest administrative unit of Nepal, we collected data, and one of the module is the environment disaster. And this is the milestone for the baseline data for the disaster mapping and other special environment related survey. Next slide, please. And what question is there? Major question. Condition of natural disaster and the hazards in this area. Flood. What is the situation of flood, landslide, soil erosion, inundation, thunderstorm, hailstorm, like this. Nepal is a small country, but different climatic zone and the different topography. So small country, but all these disasters may happen in our country. Next slide, please. And similarly, we also collect like this information: loss of life and the property in 1 year due to disaster hazards. How many people died, how many people injured, total number of loss, damages of house, loss of land, loss of livestock, loss of agricultural product, loss of people and the property due to wild animals. This information we collected from this lowest administrative unit of Nepal, and the total amount of that area we collected from our the community questionnaire. Next slide, please. Yeah, a similar process of the agriculture census. And, and just we completed the population census, and now the data processing activities is going on. Now we are on the way to agriculture census. Our the questionnaire of the agriculture census has been finalized, and in that questionnaire also we propose first time in Nepal one of the module of the climate change. in our questionnaire of the agriculture census, for where agroforestry practice and the area covered, soil degradation types and the area of soil degraded, soil test, tunnel farming under protective cover, knowledge of the climate change, effect and the impact of the climate change on the agriculture activities, management treatment of the agriculture waste, percent of crop residues being burned. These kinds of information we are collecting in the agriculture census also. These we are purposing in our agriculture census. Next slide, please. Yeah, recent activities. Just we shared the pre-field consultation part and the discuss with the national focal point reporting the UNFCCC. It means the national focal point from the ministry. And we have a technical committee with our deputy directors, with the chairperson of the deputy director general of National Statistic Office, and members from the different stakeholders like the ministries and other government and the non-government organization. And now we are working on the climate change indicator. What indicator proposed by the UNSD we can develop, working on that. Maybe within 2 months we can make our publication. What indicators proposed by the UNSD can we develop? Yeah. Similarly, we are also working on the solid waste account. Now we are also working on the solid waste account according to the SIA, System of Environment Economy Account. With the principle of the SIA, we are also working on the solid waste account. And what we are also thinking, next, let's do the second round of the climate change survey. Second round of the climate change survey. Let's new methodology or new things. We have to consult with the stakeholders, and we are planning to conduct the second round of the climate change survey to conduct. These are also we are planning in the initial phase. And what are the issues and the challenges? It means Nepal is a very developing country. We have the data gaps. Yeah, administrators are not reporting on the time. A major problem is the capacity development, coordination, collaboration. These are the problem. These are the issues which we are feeling. And similarly, we have very old statistics law now. This amendment of the new statistics law in the parliament, not it is also amendment up to now. And we have also feeling the absence of this data sharing policy, and we have very weak statistical infrastructure. And similarly, the COVID-19 pandemic also make we cannot do all activities in full ways. Now we are suffering from the third round of this COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. Yeah, expectation and for needs special surveys and censuses. Yeah, improved institutional arrangements and the structures, and the bilateral and the international cooperation for the knowledge and the technology, strengthen the data capturing mechanism in province and the local governments. Nepal recently in the federal system, we have 3 tiers of government. Yes, in the province level and local level and in the central, 3 types of government. How to make this coordination between 3 tiers of government, and how to make the data capturing mechanism. And another thing is that this for the social and the economic sector we have sufficient knowledge, but this environment sector and basically in the climate sector we are also very new, and it needs different capacity type development type of program. We are doing little by little. Yeah. And next slide, please. Yeah, yes, these are the things which we are doing on the Nepal. Basically, the National Climate Change Impact Survey, which we conducted in 2016, makes the baseline information about the climate change, and in many policy, NDC like that. And we are under the National Planning Commission. Our data used by the National Planning Commission. This one of the pioneer survey we survey. So we are also trying to planning to do the second round of survey, and recently we are working on the development of the climate change indicator according to the availability of the data. as prescribed by the UNST guideline. Thank you. Your comments and queries are highly appreciated.
Thank you very much, Sushil, for sharing excellent work. And thank you also for pointing out what is most important at the end of the day, that your data is used and helps to solve this great challenge that all the governments are currently facing. So thank you again for your presentation, and I remind all the participants that if you have questions to Sushil or any of the previous speakers, please put them in the chat, and we will now have a short break of 10 minutes, after which we will return to the discussion. So please use that time to share your questions, and in the meantime, we also have one question to you. I'm now going to share that question. So please go to menti.com one more time by putting in the code you can see on the slide or scanning the QR code, and let us know what you would most like the panelists to discuss. For example, how to set up institutional mechanism, how to prioritize indicators, what are the best approaches to dissemination and why, how to interact with users, or maybe all above. That will help us to have the discussion in the next part. So with that, we break for 10 minutes. So that means we reconvene at 10:48. Thank you very much.